15 years, I worked like a slave, supporting my wife and her family. Behind my back, they married her in a church to a younger colleague. While the newlyweds celebrated, I sold the beach house for $68 million, emptied the bank accounts, and called the police. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what city you're watching us from. My name is Francisco. I'm 49 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. Not perfect, but solid. Susanna and I had been married for 10 years. We met at a business conference when she was 32. I'd just gotten out of a divorce that had left me emotionally and financially ruined. I was rebuilding my business consulting company from scratch, working like a beast, traveling 3 weeks a month. Susanna worked in human resources for a medium-sized company. She was beautiful, nice, and seemed to understand my exhausting pace of life. We got married after a year of dating. It was a simple ceremony, nothing flashy. Her family welcomed me with open arms. Her mother, Lourdes, would hug me, calling me son. Her brother, Yvonne, always had a joke to make me laugh. They seemed like good people, normal people. How wrong I was. The first few years were good. I worked nonstop building the company. Susanna quit her job in the second year of our marriage. She said she wanted to focus on making our house a home, on being ready for when I came back from my trips. I saw it as a positive thing. I had enough money to support her comfortably. I gave her credit cards with no limit, a joint bank account with full access. We bought an apartment in the city, then a bigger house. Then, 3 years ago, I bought the beach house. $68 million. A spectacular property facing the sea with 6 bedrooms, an infinity pool, gardens designed by an award-winning landscape architect. Everything in my name, because I put in every cent, but it was our vacation home, or so I thought. Susanna decorated it with imported furniture, contemporary art, every detail perfect for her social media pictures, because that's what she did all day while I worked, post pictures of our perfect life, the house, the trips I paid for, the expensive restaurants, the shopping. She had 20,000 followers watching our dream life. I traveled constantly 2-3 weeks away, a week at home, sometimes less. My company had grown exponentially. We had contracts with multinational corporations. I personally handled the biggest accounts. I earned very well, millions a year, and I spent generously on Susanna and her family. When Lourdes needed a hip operation, I paid the entire private hospital bill, $50,000 without batting an eye. When Yvonne wanted to start a car parts business, I lent him $10,000. He never paid me back, but it didn't matter. They were family. I paid for the university of 2 of Susanna's nephews. Expensive birthday gifts for everyone. Family vacations. I was the provider, the successful man who rescued Susanna from a mediocre life, and I liked that role. It made me feel important, necessary. Susanna never complained about my absences. She never complained that I spent so much time away. Now I understand why. Every time I went on a trip, she had her own life, a life I was unknowingly financing. 2 years ago, I hired Mauricio in my company. He was 33, an industrial engineer, smart, ambitious. I put him in the operations department. We worked in the same building, but on different floors. I traveled. He stayed behind managing local projects. He was efficient, charismatic. I liked him, stupid me. I invited him to dinner at our house several times. Susanna would cook. We'd have pleasant conversation. Mauricio would bring expensive wine, compliment the decoration, congratulate Susanna on her good taste. I thought I was being a good boss, integrating my team. I was introducing my wife to her future lover. I don't know exactly when it started, but according to the messages I later recovered, the affair had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies, of encounters while I was in meetings on the other side of the country, of laughter behind my back. And it wasn't just a secret affair, something dirty and hidden. No, this was worse, much worse, because Susanna's family not only knew, they approved, they celebrated it. Lourdes adored Mauricio. He was young, handsome, present, everything I wasn't. Yvonne became his best friend. They went out to bars together. And at some point in this madness, someone had the brilliant idea that Susanna and Mauricio should get married in a church with a priest, a wedding dress, and everything, while she was still legally married to me. The plan was perfect according to them. I'd be out of the country for 2 weeks, closing a deal in Europe. Susanna had said goodbye to me at the airport with kisses, hugs, telling me she'd miss me very much, to come back soon, that she loved me. All eyes, every word, every gesture, pure acting. While I was in endless meetings in Frankfurt negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, she was choosing her wedding dress. While I was having dinner alone in five-star hotels thinking about coming home, she was trying out flower arrangements with Mauricio. While I was sending her goodnight messages telling her how much I missed her, she was sleeping with him planning her big day, her religious ceremony, her sacred lie. They organized everything in 3 weeks. They booked a small church in a town 2 hours from the city. Nothing ostentatious, but not discreet either. They invited 40 people, Susanna's entire family, close friends, Mauricio's co-workers, people who knew me, people who knew perfectly well that Susanna was married to me, and not one, not a single one, had the decency to warn me. Not even anonymously. They were all accomplices. They all sat in those wooden pews. They watched Susanna walk in with an ivory-colored dress, with a bouquet of wildflowers on her father's arm, bursting with pride, and they thought it was okay, that it was romantic, that true love had triumphed over my money. Of course, because without my $68 million in properties, without my bank account, without the credit cards I paid for, this romance wouldn't exist. The priest was a family friend, an older guy who had baptized Susanna. He didn't ask for divorce papers. He didn't ask questions. He just smiled, read his verses about eternal love, and declared them husband and wife before God. Mauricio kissed her. The people applauded. Lourdes cried with happiness in the front row. Yvonne recorded everything with his phone, excited. There was a reception afterwards in a rustic hall, with hanging lights and tables decorated with cream-colored tablecloths. They toasted with champagne, which I probably paid for without knowing, because Susanna used a credit card freely. They cut a 3-tier cake. They danced their first dance as husband and wife. Mauricio carried Susanna in his arms while everyone laughed and took pictures. Pictures. Hundreds of damned pictures documenting every second of my public humiliation. I was in Germany when this happened, having dinner with German executives, discussing profit margins and quarterly projections. I checked my phone between meetings. Susanna had sent me a picture of herself in pajamas, lying in our bed with a message, "I miss sleeping in your arms." I looked at it and felt guilty. Guilty for being so far away, for working so much, for not giving her enough time. I replied, "I'll be home soon, my love. Just hang on a little longer." She replied with a heart, a damned heart emoji, while Mauricio was probably by her side, laughing at how stupid his boss was, how easy it was to fool me. The ceremony was on a Saturday. On Sunday, the newlyweds left for their honeymoon. 5 days at a beach resort, all-inclusive, paid for with my card. Obviously, I confirmed it later when I checked the statements. $20,000 at a luxury resort, room with a sea view, spa, romantic dinners, excursions. While they were rolling around in Egyptian cotton sheets that I paid for, enjoying their forbidden love financed by my work, I was still in Europe closing deals. Oblivious, trusting, working to give my wife the life I thought she deserved. How generous of me to finance my wife's honeymoon with another man. I came back home on a Wednesday night. Exhausting flight, 12 hours in the air, terrible jet lag. I arrived at the city apartment around midnight. Susanna was awake. She greeted me at the door in a pink silk robe. She hugged me, kissed me, asked about my trip. She acted perfectly normal, zero guilt in her eyes, zero nervousness. She made me tea, helped me unpack, told me she'd spent the days watching series, visiting her mother, bored without me. I believed her every word. I went to sleep grateful to have a wife waiting for me at home, a grateful idiot that his newlywed wife with another man received him with feigned affection. On Thursday, I worked from home, recovering from the trip. On Friday, I went to the office. I had meetings all day, reports to review, decisions to make. Mauricio stopped by my office to say hello, to ask how the trip had been. He was relaxed, smiling. He was wearing a gray shirt that looked new. He told me things had gone well in my absence. I clapped him on the shoulder. I thanked him for keeping everything in order. He smiled. A smile that now, remembering it, makes my blood boil. It was the smile of a man who had just married my wife, who had taken the woman who slept in my bed on a honeymoon, who had probably seen the wedding photos 50 times while I was thanking him for doing his job well. Friday night, Susanna suggested we go out to dinner. We went to an Italian restaurant we liked. We ate pasta, drank red wine, talked about trivial things. She was radiant, glowing. She was wearing an emerald green dress that I'd given her 3 months before. She looked beautiful, happy. Now I understand why. She'd achieved the impossible, having 2 husbands, 2 lives, the financial backing of the hardworking idiot, and the passion of a young lover. She was a master of deceit, a first-rate actress, and I, the most gullible audience in the world, applauded every scene. On Saturday morning, a week after the secret wedding, I was in my study checking emails when I got a social media notification. Yvonne, Susanna's brother, had tagged me in a post. That was weird. Yvonne never tagged me in anything. I opened the app curiously, and there it was. The photo that would destroy the perfect farce they'd built. Yvonne had posted a full wedding album. 32 photos, 32 daggers straight to the heart. The first image was of Susanna entering the church on her father's arm in that ivory-colored dress, smiling as if it were the happiest day of her life. The post caption said, "Finally, my sister found the happiness she deserves. Welcome to the family, Mauricio. Best wishes to the newlyweds." I froze. I read the words 3 times. 4 or 5. I thought it was a mistake, a bad joke, some misunderstanding. I kept swiping through the photos. Susanna and Mauricio at the altar. Susanna and Mauricio cutting the cake. Mauricio carrying Susanna. Lord hugging Mauricio. The toast. The first dance. Every image was a slap in the face. Every smile a betrayal. The comments were the worst. Congratulations. What a beautiful couple. Finally, Susanna is happy. You deserve all the best. 38 comments from family, friends, acquaintances, all celebrating, no one mentioning me as if I'd never existed. My hands were shaking holding the phone. I felt a buzzing in my ears as if something inside my head was about to explode. I read every comment. I saw every photo. I zoomed in on the details, the ring Mauricio had put on Susanna, the flowers, the decoration, the smiling people, my in-laws, whom I'd supported, helped, financially assisted for 10 years, celebrating my wife's wedding to another man. It wasn't a shameful affair hidden in cheap hotels. It wasn't furtive encounters full of guilt. This was a public declaration, a celebration, a complete social event designed to humiliate me. Although I wasn't supposed to know yet, but Yvonne, the imbecile, had ruined the plan with his stupidity. He'd posted the photos, he'd tagged me, and now I knew everything. I went downstairs in silence. Susanna was in the living room, sitting on the sofa, watching something on her tablet. She was wearing comfy sweatpants and a loose blouse. She looked relaxed, at peace. I stood in front of her without saying anything. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well?" I showed her the phone. The photo of her entering the church in her wedding dress filled the screen. Her smile froze. Her eyes went wide. The color drained from her face in 2 seconds. She dropped the tablet. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I was still silent, waiting, giving her a chance to explain the unexplainable. "Francisco, I can explain." Those were her first words. "I can explain." As if there were a logical explanation for marrying another man while we were still married, as if there were any justification in the universe for what she'd done. I sat in front of her calmly, too calmly. That calmness surprised me myself. "Explain," I said. My voice sounded strange, as if it were coming from someone else. She started to cry. Instant tears, perfectly timed. "Francisco, please, you have to understand. Mauricio and I fell in love. I didn't want it to happen, but it did. You're never here. I'm alone all the time. It makes me feel loved, important. You just work, and I feel invisible." I listened to her rehearse speech without interrupting. She continued. She said the church marriage wasn't real, just a symbolic ceremony, that legally we were still married, and that's what mattered, that she never wanted to hurt me, that this had nothing to do with me, that she deserved to be happy. Every word was more absurd than the last, more insulting. I asked her how long they'd been together. 2 years, she admitted between sobs. 2 years, 730 days of lies. I asked if my money had paid for any of that wedding. She was silent. That was a yes. I asked if it had paid for the honeymoon. More silence. Another yes. I asked if her family knew. They all knew, she whispered. They were all there. They all betrayed me. They all lived off my generosity while they planned this circus. I got up. She tried to grab my hand. Francisco, forgive me. We can fix this. I love you. I also love Mauricio, but I love you. We can go to therapy. We can get through this. I pulled my hand away. Her declaration of love sounded as empty as her fake marriage. I told her to stay in the house, not to touch anything, not to call anyone. She asked where I was going. I didn't answer. I took my car and drove. I had no destination. I just needed air, space, distance from this woman I no longer recognized. The woman who had slept next to me last night, kissing me, telling me she loved me after having married another man a week before. I drove for 2 hours on the highway. My mind was a chaos of images. Susanna entering the church. Mauricio kissing her. Lourdes applauding and Yvonne recording, everyone laughing, everyone knowing, everyone complicit. I thought about the 10 years we'd been together, the sacrifices I'd made, the nights I'd spent on planes, in lonely hotels, working to exhaustion to give her everything. And she'd thrown it all away for a 35-year-old guy with a good body and free time. It wasn't just the sexual betrayal that I could have understood, forgiven maybe. It was the premeditation, the audacity, the public humiliation, the theft, because that's what it was. Theft. She'd used my money to celebrate her betrayal. I stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the mountains. I turned off the engine. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in hours my mind cleared. The anger was still there, burning in my chest like hot coals, but on top of the anger, something colder, more calculated appeared. Clarity. I wasn't an impulsive man. I wasn't someone who shouted, broke things, made scenes. I was a businessman, a strategist. I'd built an empire from scratch because I knew how to analyze situations, identify weaknesses, execute plans. And this situation was no different. This was a business problem, a failed transaction that needed to be closed properly with minimal losses for me and maximum for them. I took out my phone, looked through my contacts, found a number of Julio, my personal lawyer. Julio and I had been friends for 30 years. He'd handled my first divorce, all my real estate transactions, commercial contracts. He was brilliant, ruthless when he needed to be, and absolutely loyal. I called him. He answered on the second ring. Francisco, good to hear from you. What do you need? Without greetings, without preambles, I said, Julio, I need you to come to my office early on Monday. We have an urgent legal situation. My wife just committed bigamy. Silence on the other end. Then, repeat that. I briefly explained the wedding, the photos, everything. I heard his heavy breathing. That son of a muttered. Then his professional voice returned. Don't talk to her. Don't discuss anything. Don't sign anything. I'm on my way there right now. No, I told him. Monday is soon enough. I need the weekend to think, to plan. Julio insisted. Francisco, this is serious. Bigamy is a criminal offense, but we also need to protect your assets immediately. She has access to your accounts. She can empty you out before Monday. He was right. I said, give me an hour. I'm going to make some calls. See you at your office at 4. I hung up. I called my private bank. I spoke directly with the manager, Daniel, someone I'd worked with for 15 years. Daniel, I need to freeze all joint accounts with my wife. Now, no questions, just do it. Daniel knew my temper. He knew if I asked for something with that urgency, there was a serious reason. Give me 10 minutes, he said. He called back in 8. Done. All joint accounts frozen. She can't withdraw a cent, credit cards canceled too. Next call. My accountant, Miguel. Miguel, I need a complete report of all of Susanna's expenses for the last 6 months. Everything, every transaction, every charge. I need it by 9 a.m. on Monday. Miguel, efficient as always, said, you'll have it. Next call. My real estate agent. Clara, the beach house. I want to sell it. Clara was surprised. Francisco, It's a beautiful property. The market is okay, but it's not the best time. We could wait 6 months and get a better price. I don't care, I said. I want it sold this week. Clara sighed. Let me make some calls. I have 2 clients who have asked about properties in that area. I'll call you tomorrow. I returned home 3 hours later. Susanna was still in the living room. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She stood up when I came in. Francisco, we have to talk. We have nothing to talk about, I replied. I'm going to the beach house tomorrow. Alone. You stay here. I need space. Her face lit up with pathetic hope. Yes, yes, of course. Take your time. I'm going to end things with Mauricio. We're going to fix this. I promise you. I looked at her with something akin to pity. She really believed this could be fixed, that I would forgive, that we go back to being a happy couple. How foolish she was. That night, I slept in the guest room. I couldn't be in the same bed with her. Just seeing her made me nauseous. I heard her footsteps in the hallway at midnight. She stopped in front of my door. She waited there for several minutes. Finally, she left. I didn't sleep. I spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, processing, calculating. A plan was beginning to form in my mind, not just a simple divorce, not just separating and moving on. No, they had meticulously planned my humiliation. I would meticulously plan their destruction, not with violence, not with shouting, with the law, with documents, with the same coldness with which they had planned that wedding circus. On Saturday morning, I packed a bag. Susanna made coffee, trying to act normal. Francisco, I'm really sorry for everything. I know you're angry, you have the right to be, but please don't throw 10 years away. We can get through this. I looked at her as I poured coffee into my favorite mug. The same mug I'd used 1,000 mornings. The same woman I'd kissed 1,000 times. Now she seemed like a stranger, an actress playing the part of a repentant wife. I asked her something I needed to know. Are you pregnant? It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Her hand trembled. The coffee spilled on the counter. She looked at me with wide eyes. How do you know? I saw your belly in the photos. I lied. You looked different. She instinctively put her hands on her stomach. 3 months, she whispered. It's Mauricio's. I nodded. Of course it's Mauricio's. I'd had a vasectomy 8 years ago after my first marriage. I never told Susanna. The conversation about having children never came up. She always said she didn't want to be a mother, that her career was important, that children were a huge responsibility. Lies. She just didn't want to have children with me. But with Mauricio, the love of her life, of course she did. How convenient. A baby to secure her future with him. A baby I probably would have ended up supporting if I hadn't discovered this farce. Thank you for your honesty, I told her. I'm going to the beach. Don't look for me. Don't call me. I need to think. I drove the 2 hours to the beach house. The traffic was light. The day was clear. Ironic, the perfect weather for the worst weekend of my life. I arrived around noon. The house looked spectacular as always, white, modern, with those huge windows overlooking the ocean. I'd invested a fortune in every detail. The imported marble floors, the designer kitchen with stainless steel appliances, the custom-made furniture, the integrated sound system, everything perfect, everything ready for Susanna and Mauricio to probably think they'd keep it in the divorce. Over my dead body, I opened all the windows. The fresh sea breeze came in with that salty smell that always relaxed me. I made myself a whiskey. I sat on the terrace watching the waves. I took out my phone, opened the wedding photos Yvonne had posted again. This time I looked at them with distance, without emotion, as if they were evidence in a legal case, because that's what they were. I took screenshots of everything, every photo, every comment, every like. I documented who had attended, who had commented, who knew. The list was long, 43 people, 43 witnesses to their crime, because that's what it was, a crime. Bigamy. In our country, getting married while already married is a crime that can get you sent to jail for 2 to 6 years. Susanna knew it, Mauricio too, and still they did it. For love, they'd say. For stupidity, I'd say. For arrogance, because they thought I'd never find out. Or worse, because they thought if I did find out, I'd be too proud to do anything, too worried about my reputation to expose them publicly. They were wrong. My reputation was built on being a fair, hard-working, honest man. Their reputation was about to be destroyed for being liars, thieves, and stupid. Clara called me on Saturday afternoon. "Francisco, I have news. There's a buyer interested in the house. A businessman from the capital who wants something for his retirement. He can pay in cash. He's willing to offer $65 million. We can close in a week," I told her. $68 million. That's my price. I'm not negotiating. Clara sighed. "Francisco, the current market. 68 or nothing," I repeated. Clara knew I wasn't kidding. "Let me talk to him. I'll call you in an hour." She called in 40 minutes. "He accepts $68 million. He wants to see the house tomorrow." "Perfect," I said. "Bring him." On Sunday, Clara arrived with the buyer. A successful man in his 60s, with that air of someone who has made money and knows how to spend it. He toured the house slowly. He admired every detail. The view, the design, the location. His wife came behind taking pictures, excited. "This is perfect," she told her husband. "It's exactly what we wanted." The man extended his hand to me. "Done deal. $68 million. Cash. We'll close this week." I shook his hand. "My lawyer will prepare the documents tomorrow." He smiled. "Excellent. By the way, why are you selling so fast? It's an incredible property." "Divorce," I replied simply. He nodded with understanding. I'm sorry." I wasn't sorry. For the first time in 2 days, I felt something like satisfaction. Early on Monday, I returned to the city. I stopped by the house only to change clothes. Susanna was asleep. I didn't wake her. I arrived at Julio's office at 7 in the morning. He was already there with coffee made and a pile of documents on his desk. "Francisco, sit down. Let's talk." I told him everything from the beginning, the 10 years of marriage, my constant work, the money I'd invested in her and her family, hiring Mauricio, the 2-year affair, the secret wedding, the pregnancy, the photos, everything. Julio took meticulous notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "This is legal gold," he said. "We have bigamy, fraud, misuse of credit cards, possibly more as we investigate." She's finished. Miguel arrived at 8 with the financial report. We reviewed it together. The numbers were obscene. In 6 months, Susanna had spent $230,000. Clothes, restaurants, trips, hotels, spa, jewelry, and the worst, $50,000 in cash withdrawn from the joint account. $50,000 that probably went to pay for part of the wedding and honeymoon, my money financing my humiliation. Julio whistled. "This is misappropriation of marital funds." Another charge. We kept building the case. I showed him the screenshots of the photos. Julio studied them. "We need the complete album," he said, "and witness statements. We're going to sink everyone who participated." I told him about the house sale. Julio got serious. "Francisco, legally you can sell it. It's in your name. But Susanna could argue it's marital property and sue for her share." "Not if she's in jail," I replied. Julio smiled. It was a predatory smile. "True, very true." He prepared a complete strategy. First, we'd file a criminal complaint for bigamy. With the photos as evidence, the case was solid. Second, we'd start the divorce process based on adultery and fraud. Third, we'd sue civilly for the return of all the money she'd spent inappropriately. Fourth, if Mauricio had knowingly participated in the use of my resources, we'd sue him too. "But there's more," I said. My tone made Julio look up. "I lent Yvonne $10,000 3 years ago for his business. He never paid me back a cent. It's documented." Julio nodded. "We can sue him. I paid $50,000 for lured operation. The hospital bill is in my name. Also documented. I paid for universities, gifts, family vacations. It all adds up." Julio calculated mentally. "We're talking about approximately $500,000 in total that you gave or lent to that family. All recoverable if we prove it was under false pretenses. If they knew about the infidelity and kept you in the dark while taking your money, that's conspiracy to commit fraud." The morning turned into afternoon as we built the case. Julio called a private investigator, Daniel, someone he'd worked with before. He explained the situation. Daniel said he needed 48 hours to get more evidence. Statements from people who attended the wedding, hotel records of Susanna and Mauricio, phone calls, messages, everything we could use. I gave him access to the accounts where I was the holder. All legal, all documented. Daniel got to work immediately. I called human resources at my company. I spoke with Edna, the director. Edna, I need you to review Mauricio Sanchez's work history, specifically his absences, leaves, work trips, everything for the last 2 years. Edna asked if there was a problem. Possibly, I replied. I just need the information. I'll have it this afternoon, she promised. 3 hours later, she sent me a file. Mauricio had taken 28 days of personal leave in 2 years. I compared the dates with Susanna's expense records. They matched perfectly. Every time he requested leave, she made expenses at hotels, expensive restaurants, always in the same city. They were together using my money during work hours that I paid him for. On Tuesday morning, Julio and I went directly to the prosecutor's office. We brought a thick folder with evidence, wedding photos, screenshots of comments, our original marriage certificate, bank statements, all organized chronologically, labeled impeccable. A young prosecutor, Eulalia Mendez, a specialist in family crimes, attended to us. We explained the case. She reviewed the documents in silence. After 20 minutes, she looked up. "This is clear bigamy," she said. "We have the valid marriage certificate. We have photographic evidence of a second ceremony. We have public witnesses. It's a solid case. When do you want to proceed?" "Immediately," I replied. Eulalia nodded. "I'm going to prepare the formal complaint. I'll need you to sign some documents. I also need the names of all the witnesses who can testify." I gave her the list of 43 people who had commented or appeared in the photos. She whistled softly. "This is a lot of accomplices. We're going to have to question several. The process will take time." "I don't care about the time," I told her. "I want it done right, so there's no way they can escape." Eulalia looked at me directly. "Mr. Francisco, I need to ask you something. This is going to be very public, very mediatic. Your name is going to be in the news. Are you prepared for that?" "I am," I replied without hesitation. They made this public when they celebrated that wedding with 40 guests, when they posted photos on social media. I didn't start this public humiliation. They did. I'm just going to finish it. Eulalia nodded with approval. "I like your attitude. We're going to sink them." I signed the criminal complaint. Bigamy against Susana Ramirez de Ochoa, against Mauricio Andres Alazer, against any accomplice who had facilitated the act. The complaint was officially registered. There was no turning back. The wheels of justice were beginning to turn, and I was pushing them with all my might. That afternoon, Clara closed the sale of the beach house. $68 million transferred to my personal account, the account that only I controlled, the one Susanna never touched. The buyer was happy. So was I. That house represented years of work, but it also represented the love nest that Susanna had probably imagined sharing with Mauricio. Now, it was ashes converted into liquid cash that she would never see. I sent a message to Susanna. I sold the beach house. I needed liquidity for the legal expenses that are coming. Her reply came in 30 seconds. "What legal expenses? What's happening?" "Francisco, you're scaring me." I didn't reply. I let her imagination work. On Wednesday, Daniel the investigator gave me his report. It was devastating. He'd gotten statements from 3 people who attended the wedding. One was a distant cousin of Susanna, who had his own legal problems and cooperated easily in exchange for me not mentioning him. He confirmed that everyone knew Susanna was still married to me, that Lourdes had explicitly said I was a good provider but a bad husband, that Mauricio was Susanna's true love, that the entire family supported the relationship because Mauricio treated them better, visited them more, was more present with my money paying for everything. Daniel also got records from a hotel. Susanna and Mauricio had registered together 17 times in 2 years. Always luxury rooms, always paid for with my credit card. 17 times, an average of once every month and a half. Romantic getaways financed by the idiot husband. Daniel found more text messages between Susanna and her mother. He'd recovered them from a cloud backup Susanna had synchronized. In the messages, Lourdes told Susanna she deserved to be happy, that Francisco was a good man but boring, that money wasn't everything, that Mauricio truly loved her, that they should get married soon before I suspected anything. There was a particularly revealing message from 3 weeks before the wedding. Lourdes wrote, I already spoke with Father Ramon. He says he can do the ceremony without papers if we explain the situation. I told him they're waiting for the divorce, but want to get married before God. He understands. He's going to charge $2,000. Susanna replied, Perfect, Mom. Francisco gave me access to the savings account. I'm going to take the money out tomorrow. He won't even notice. He's too busy with the Germany contract. The anger I felt reading that was indescribable. They had even planned to use my money to pay the priest who would illegally marry them. On Thursday, Edna from Human Resources asked for a meeting. She entered my office with a serious face. Francisco, I need to talk to you about Mauricio. Go ahead, I told her. She closed the door. I've been reviewing his performance, as you asked, and I found some irregularities. Mauricio has been using company resources for personal purposes, computers, printers. He even hired a freelance graphic designer that the company paid for, supposedly for an internal project, but there's no project registered. I asked the designer for details. He made wedding invitations. I felt a bitter smile form on my lips. Of course he did. Edna continued. I also discovered that Mauricio has been leaving work early constantly. He clocks a full day, but the security system shows he leaves at 3 for in the afternoon, 3 times a week for 2 years. That's time theft. It's cause for immediate dismissal. Don't fire him yet, I told her. Document everything, prepare the complete file, but wait for my signal. Edna nodded. I understand, Francisco. I'm very sorry for whatever is happening. Thank you, Edna. Your loyalty means a lot. That night, Susanna showed up at my office. I hadn't been home in 3 days. I'd been sleeping in a hotel. I needed distance from her, but she managed to get the security guard to let her up. She entered without knocking. Francisco, we need to talk. This is too much. You sold our house without consulting me. You blocked the accounts. You canceled my cards. What's happening? Why are you punishing me like this? I looked up from my computer. I looked at her like you look at a stranger. I'm punishing you? I asked. You think this is a punishment, Susanna? You haven't seen anything yet. Her face turned pale. What do you mean? I got up. I walked towards her. She instinctively stepped back. I filed a criminal complaint against you on Tuesday, I told her. Bigamy. It's a serious crime. You could go to jail for 2 to 6 years. I also sued your mother, your brother, everyone who took my money knowing they were betraying me. I'm going to get back every last cent, and I'm going to make sure Mauricio loses his job, his reputation, and any future he imagined with you. Her eyes filled with tears. You can't do this. Yes, I can, and I'm doing it. Francisco, please. She fell to her knees, literally to her knees in front of me. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. You can't send us to jail. Think about the baby. I looked down at her. That baby is not my problem. It's Mauricio's. Let him take responsibility. Besides, I'm not sending anyone to jail. You put yourselves there when you decided to get married illegally. I'm just reporting the crime. Justice will decide the rest. She was sobbing uncontrollably. I'm begging you now. Drop the charges. I'll do whatever you want. I'll divorce Mauricio. Well, you're not legally married to him, so there's nothing to divorce. That's precisely the problem. I walked out of my office, leaving her there crying. The security guard looked at me with a question in his eyes. There's a woman in my office, I told him. When she calms down, please escort her out of the building and don't let her in again. He nodded. Yes, sir. I drove back to the hotel. I ordered room service, a burger, and whiskey. I ate in silence, watching the news. My phone rang. It was Lourdes. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times. Then Yvonne. The number I didn't recognize, probably Mauricio. I didn't answer any of them. I had nothing to say to them. My lawyer would speak for me. The documents would speak for me. The law would speak for me. On Friday morning, Julio called me early. Francisco, I have news. Prosecutor Eulalia got a court order. They're going to summon Susanna and Mauricio to testify next week. Also Lourdes, Yvonne, and the priest who officiated the ceremony. This is going to move fast. Perfect, I replied. How long until the trial? Julio, He thought for a moment. If they plead guilty and negotiate, maybe 3 months. If they go to trial, 6 to 8 months. But with the evidence we have, it would be stupid to go to trial. They're going to negotiate, they're going to plead for mercy, and that's when you squeeze harder. On Saturday, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The initial storm of emotions had passed. The blind rage, the humiliation, the pain, all of it had transformed into something purer. Determination, purpose. It wasn't revenge I was seeking, it was justice, it was balance. They had taken 10 years of my trust, my money, my dignity, and turned them into a farce. I would take everything they valued and turn it to ashes, not with violence, not with shouting, with papers, with laws, with the same civilization they had so casually violated. Clara called me that morning. Francisco, the buyer of the house, wants to know if some of the furniture is included, specifically the living room set and the dining room set. They're beautiful pieces. I told her everything is included, all the furniture, all the decoration, the paintings, the dishes, the sheets, everything. Let him take even the last glass. Clara sounded surprised. Are you sure? That furniture is easily worth $200,000. You could sell it separately. Give it to them, I replied. Raise the price if you want, but I want that house empty, completely empty. Understood, Clara said. She knew there was a story behind my decision, and she knew not to ask. I spent the weekend organizing my life. I hired a moving company. I gave them precise instructions. I wanted them to take all my personal belongings from the apartment I shared with Susanna. My clothes, my books, my documents, my personal computer, everything. I wanted them to take it to a new apartment I'd rented in another part of the city, a smaller, more functional place with no memories, no ghosts. The company worked on Sunday while Susanna was at her mother's house. In 6 hours, my 10 years of married life were packed in boxes and out of there. I left a note on the dining room table. It simply said, "The apartment is yours until the judge decides otherwise, but the bills are in your name now. Utilities, maintenance, everything. Pay them yourself or get Mauricio to help you. It's not my problem anymore." I didn't sign the note. There was no need. I changed the locks on my new home office. I also canceled cards whose numbers she might know. I closed shared accounts, every financial link cut, every access point blocked. She was completely alone now, financially speaking, just as I've been emotionally for 2 years. On Monday, the first official summons arrived. A court officer knocked on the door of the apartment where Susanna was still living. He handed her the documents. Summons to testify before the prosecutor's office for the crime of bigamy. Date, time, location, all official. Susanna called me hysterical. I didn't answer. She left me a voicemail. Her voice was trembling so much you could barely understand her. "Francisco, please, this is crazy. You can't do this to us. We're a family. We're going to have a baby. Please drop this. I'm begging you." I deleted the message without finishing it. We weren't a family. We never were. She and Mauricio were a family. I was just the bank. Mauricio also received his summons at the office. Edna told me about it later. The officer arrived in the middle of the workday. He asked for Mauricio Andres Alazer. The entire floor went silent. Mauricio signed for it with a face as pale as paper. When the officer left, Mauricio went straight to the bathroom. Edna said he was in there for 20 minutes. When he came out, his eyes were red. "Go on," I said, still not looking at him. "Please, this got out of control. We never wanted to hurt you. Susanna and I fell in love. It was something that just happened." I finally looked up. Something that just happened. For 2 years with 17 getaways to luxury hotels, with a meticulously planned wedding with her entire family as accomplices. Yes, Mauricio, that sounds very spontaneous. He swallowed hard. I know it was wrong, but you don't have to involve the police. We can solve this like adults. We can reach an agreement. I leaned back in my chair. An agreement? What kind of agreement do you have in mind, Mauricio? He perked up, thinking there was an opening. Well, maybe we could compensate you financially. I can pay something monthly. Susanna can give you back part of the money. We can sign any document you need. Just drop the criminal charges. I looked at him in silence for a long moment. Then I asked, "How much do you make a month, Mauricio?" He hesitated. For 1,500. I nodded. And you plan to support Susanna and the baby with that? Yes, we'll adjust. Live with less, be more careful. I laughed. It was a humorless laugh. Mauricio, Susanna spends it on a weekend. How exactly do you plan to maintain her lifestyle? We'll change, he insisted. She's going to work. We're going to be a normal family. We don't need luxuries. We just need to be together. How noble, I replied. Too bad you discovered this love for the simple life after spending $230,000 of my money. Mauricio turned red. We'll pay you back every cent. I promise you. With what? I asked. With your $4,500 a month salary, which you won't have anymore because you're fired. His face fell. What? You can't fire me. Of course I can. You use company resources for personal purposes. You stole work time. You violated the code of ethics by having a relationship with your boss's wife. Human Resources has a complete file. You're out. Francisco, please, I have a baby on the way. I need this job. Then you should have thought about that before sleeping with my wife. Mauricio broke down. He covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know but please don't ruin my life over this. Your life? I asked. Mauricio, you ruined your own life. I'm just documenting the consequences. He stumbled out of my office. Edna came in 5 minutes later, ready the dismissal papers. I signed without reading. Mauricio would be out of the company in 2 weeks with minimal severance. 0 recommendation. In our industry, that was a professional death sentence. No one would hire him without references. On Tuesday, Lord came to see me at my new office. I don't know how she got the address. Susanna probably gave it to her. She rang the bell insistently until I opened it. She came in like a hurricane. Francisco, how dare you do this to my daughter? She's pregnant. She's desperate. You're a heartless man. I let her talk, vomit all her poison. When she finished, I asked her calmly, Lourdes, did you know about the affair? She hesitated. That's not the point. The point is yes or no, did you know? Susanna is my daughter. I just want her to be happy. That's a yes. Did you know when I paid you the $50,000 for your operation? Silence. Did you know when you accepted all the Christmas gifts? Why I paid for your vacation to Europe last year? When I lent you money you never paid back. That's different. No, Lourdes. It's exactly the same. You took money from a man while supporting his daughter's betrayal. That's called fraud, and you're going to answer for it legally. Her face turned red. You're not perfect. You were never home. You worked all the time. Susanna was lonely. She deserved to have someone who valued her. Then you should have gotten a divorce first. I shouted. I finally shouted. And not get married in secret like thieves. And not steal my money to finance your farce. Lourdes shrank. It's not stealing. You were married. It was community money. Not anymore. The judge will decide that. But I'll give you a preview. He won't be on your side. That week was a parade of confrontations. Yvonne sent me threatening messages that he was going to sue me for defamation, that he was going to expose on social media what a bad husband I was. I replied with a single line. I'll see you in court. He stopped writing. Susanna's relatives I didn't even know called me, begging me to reconsider, to think about the baby, to be compassionate. I blocked every number. I owed these people nothing. I didn't have to explain anything to them. My compassion had died the day I saw those wedding photos. Now, there was only the law. Cold, impersonal. Perfect. Julio kept me informed of the process. Prosecutor Eulalia was building a solid case. She'd interrogated 10 witnesses. They all confirmed the same story. Susanna was still married to me. Everyone knew it. The wedding was real, with the intention of being binding before God, if not before the law. The priest testified that Lourdes had lied to him, telling him the divorce was in process, but he never asked for proof. Never verified. That made him an accomplice. His church was now under investigation too. The pieces were falling one by one. Like dominoes, I'd carefully set up. 3 weeks after filing the complaint, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. Julio called me on a Wednesday morning. Francisco, Susanna, and Mauricio want to negotiate. They're terrified. Their lawyer says they'll plead guilty if you drop some of the civil charges. They want a deal. I sat at my desk feeling a deep satisfaction. Now, they wanted to negotiate. Now that they saw this was real, that the consequences were inevitable, they wanted mercy. What are they offering? I asked. Julio read from his notes. Mauricio is willing to sign a debt acknowledgement for $100,000. I laughed. Julio, they stole more than $300,000 from me between fraudulent expenses and the money I gave their family. $100,000 is an insult. I know, Julio replied. That's why I haven't accepted anything, but I wanted you to know they're willing to talk. What do you want to do? I thought for a moment. This wasn't just about money. It was about justice, about them understanding that actions have consequences, that you can't destroy someone's life and get away with it. Tell them this, I said to Julio. Susanna and Mauricio plead guilty to bigamy. They accept 2 years of probation, any violation, and they go straight to jail. Mauricio signs a debt acknowledgement for $250,000, payable in 10 years with 5% annual interest. If he's late on a single payment, the full amount becomes due immediately, and I'll sue him for the full amount. Julio was writing fast. Go on. Susanna signs the total waiver of marital property. The apartment where she lives now. She has 30 days to vacate. It's mine, and I'm going to sell it. Lourdes gives me back the $50,000 from the operation. Yvonne gives me back the $120,000 from the loan. They both have 1 year to pay, or they'll face judicial execution of their assets. And everyone, absolutely everyone, signs confidentiality agreements. They don't talk about this case. They don't give interviews. They don't post on social media. If they do, the fine is $100,000 per violation, plus a lawsuit for additional damages. Julio whistled. Francisco, this is brutal. They're going to reject it. Then we'll see them in court, I replied. And there they'll lose much more. Not just money, they'll lose their reputation, their freedom, everything. You decide what's more brutal. Julio smiled. I like how you think. I'll present your proposal. I'll call you in a few hours. He hung up. I stood looking out my office window. The city stretched out below, indifferent to the small human dramas unfolding in its buildings. A month ago, I was a married man with a seemingly stable life. Now I was a man who had declared total war on his own family and was winning. Julio called 3 hours later. Francisco, you won't believe it. They accepted everything without changing a single word. They're desperate. The lawyer says Susanna hasn't stopped crying for 2 days, that Mauricio is having panic attacks, that the family is collapsing financially because no one can get credit with the pending lawsuits. They accept your terms, all of them. I felt a moment of something like pity, but it passed quickly. I remember the photos, the wedding dress, the kisses, the laughter, my money paying for it all. The pity disappeared. Perfect, I told Julio. Prepare the documents. I want everything signed this week. Don't give them time to change their minds. On Friday, we met at Julio's office. Everyone was there. Susanna, with swollen eyes, wrinkled clothes, constantly touching the belly where the baby was growing. Mauricio, haggard, with deep dark circles, trembling slightly. Lourdes, aged 10 years and 3 weeks, with a lost look in her eyes. Yvonne, quiet for the first time in his life, nervously biting his nails, and their respective lawyers, all with defeated expressions. I arrived last. I walked in with Julio by my side. They all looked at me. In their eyes, I saw fear, resentment. But above all, I saw defeat. We sat around a long conference table. Prosecutor Eulalia was also present to ensure the agreement met legal requirements. Julio distributed copies of the agreement to everyone, 20 pages of terms and conditions, each clause designed to protect me, to ensure they paid for what they did. Susanna's lawyer read aloud. Susanna Ramirez agrees to plead guilty to the crime of bigamy. She accepts 2 years of probation. She waives all marital property acquired during the marriage with Francisco Medina. She agrees to vacate the marital home in 30 days. She accepts the divorce without claiming alimony, financial compensation, or division of assets. Mauricio's lawyer continued. Mauricio Andres Alazer agrees to plead guilty to the crime of bigamy as an accomplice. He accepts 2 years of probation. He signs a promissory note for $250,000 payable in 120 monthly installments of $2,500 with 5% annual interest. He acknowledges that any delay of more than 30 days in a payment makes the entire debt due. Mauricio closed his eyes. $500 a month for 10 years with a baby on the way and no job. It was a life sentence financially, but he'd sign his own sentence when he decided to marry my wife. The lawyers for Lourdes and Yvonne read their respective agreements. Repayment of money in installments. Acknowledgement of fraud. Acceptance of responsibility. When they finished, Eulalia spoke. This agreement is acceptable to the state. The accused will plead guilty before a judge next week. They will receive sentences of probation, as stipulated here. Any violation will result in jail time. Did everyone understand? There was a heavy silence. Finally, Susanna spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. Francisco, can I say something? Julio looked at me. I nodded. She wiped away her tears. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I did love you. Maybe not in the right way, but I loved you, and I'm deeply sorry for all the pain I caused you. I looked at her without expression. Susanna, if you'd loved me, you would have asked for a divorce. You would have been honest. You would have had the courage to end things before starting with him. But you didn't. You chose lies, betrayal, and now you're paying the price. That's not my fault, it's yours. More tears rolled down her cheeks, but she said nothing more. Mauricio tried. Francisco, I know there's no excuse for what I did. You were a good boss. You gave me opportunities, and I wasted them I interrupted him by sleeping with my wife. Yes, you did. And not just that, Mauricio, you used my company's resources, you stole my time, my money, my trust, and then you had the nerve to come in my office and ask me for mercy. How did you expect me to react, to give you my blessing, to pay for the baby on the way, to continue being the convenient idiot who finances your lives while you played happy family? Mauricio lowered his head. I'm sorry, that's all I can say. Lourdes spoke with a trembling voice. Francisco, I just wanted my daughter to be happy. I made mistakes, I know, but a mother will always protect her children. Understand that at least. I looked at her directly. Lourdes, you protect your children by teaching them values, not by helping them commit crimes. What you did wasn't motherly love, it was criminal complicity, and you're going to pay for it just like everyone else. She sobbed but nodded. Yvonne didn't even try to speak. He knew there was nothing to say. His stupidity in posting those photos had started this cascade. He was the weakest link, and he knew it. Julio placed the signature pages in front of each person. Sign here, here, and here. Initials on each page. One by one they signed. The sound of pens on paper was the only noise in the room. When everyone had finished, Julio collected the documents, copied them, gave a complete copy to each party. This is binding now, he announced. Any violation will have immediate legal consequences. Everyone understood. The following week was like watching the end of a movie in slow motion. On Monday, Susanna and Mauricio appeared before the judge. I was there, sitting in the third row of the courtroom. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. The judge, an older man in his 60s with a serious face, read the charges. Bigamy, fraud, misuse of resources. The list was long. He asked how they pleaded. Guilty, Susanna said with a broken voice. Guilty, Mauricio repeated, looking at the floor. The judge looked at them with evident contempt. You have committed a serious crime against the institution of marriage and against Mr. Medina here present. Your actions demonstrate a total lack of moral integrity and respect for the law. The judge continued. However, you have reached an agreement with the affected party and the prosecution. I accept the terms. 2 years of probation for each of you. You must report monthly to a probation officer. Any violation, including not paying the agreed restitutions, will result in an immediate prison sentence. Both nodded. The judge banged his gavel. Case closed. Susanna left the courtroom crying. Mauricio was holding her arm, staggering himself. They passed by me without looking at me. I felt nothing. Only satisfaction that justice had finally been served. The apartment where Susanna lived was vacated in 2 weeks. She didn't wait the full 30 days. She couldn't pay the utilities. The electricity was cut off when she didn't pay the bill. The water too. Mauricio, and she moved into a small apartment in a cheap area of the city. 2 rooms with no view. No luxuries. Yvonne helped them with the move. How ironic. The same one who posted the photos now carried boxes from his sister's shattered life. I sold the apartment 3 weeks later. A young professional couple bought it. They paid well. Another brick in my rebuilt financial fortress. Mauricio found a job after 2 months of searching. A position in a small company. He earned half of what he earned with me, $200 a month. Of that, $500 was supposed to go to pay his debt to me. Impossible. His first payment was 20 days late. Julio sent him a letter. Formal warning. The next payment arrived on time, but incomplete. $1,000 instead of $500. Another letter. Mauricio called Julio begging for an extension. Julio consulted me. What do you want to do? I told him, give him an extension. 6 months of reduced payments to $1,000 while he finds a better job. But after that, the full amount or we'll execute the promissory note. It wasn't generosity, it was strategy. I wanted Mauricio to feel the constant pressure for every month when he made that payment, to remember what he'd done, to live with the shadow of debt hanging over his head for 10 years. That was worse than sending him to jail. Jail ends. Properly structured debt is perpetual, and I had all the time in the world to collect. Susanna tried to get a job too, but her pregnancy was advanced. No one wanted to hire someone who would need maternity leave in 3 months. She was trapped at home, depending on Mauricio's miserable salary, living a life that was a world away from the perfect photos she used to post. Lourdes sold her house to pay me the $50. The house where she'd lived for 30 years, where she raised her children. She moved into a rented apartment, smaller, sadder. Every time she paid rent to her landlord, she probably thought of me, of how her greed and complicity had cost her home. Yvonne hadn't paid me yet. He had no way. His parts business had gone bankrupt. He owed suppliers, the bank, several creditors. My $10,000 was at the back of the line, but I was waiting. I had the court judgment. Eventually, when he sold something, when he inherited something, I'd be there to collect. With interest, with late fees, with everything. My life, on the other hand, flourished. Strange to say it like that, but it's the truth. Without Susanna draining my emotional and financial resources, I rediscovered who I was. I took up hobbies I'd abandoned. I started exercising regularly. I lost 8 kilograms. I looked better. I felt better. I went out with some friends I'd neglected during my marriage. Men who had warned me about Susanna, but whom I had ignored. They didn't say, I told you so. They just invited me for beers and soccer games. Their silent friendship meant more than 1,000 words of comfort. 6 months after the divorce, I met Clara, my real estate agent, at a social event. We'd worked together professionally, but never socially. That night we talked for hours. She was smart, independent, with her own successful career. She didn't need me to rescue her. She didn't need my money. She just enjoyed my company. We started dating casually. Dinners, movies, walks in the park. Nothing serious. At first, I wasn't ready for serious, but she was patient. She understood I was coming from a dark place. She didn't push, she didn't demand, she was just there. One night, 3 months after our first coffee, Clara asked me about Susanna. We'd carefully avoided the topic, but eventually it had to come out. I told her everything. The betrayal, the secret wedding, the pregnancy, the legal revenge, everything. Clara listened without interrupting. When I finished, I waited for her reaction. I expected judgment, criticism, for her to tell me I'd been too harsh, too cruel. Instead, she said, you did the right thing. They stole from you. They lied to you, they humiliated you, and you used the tools society gives us to protect ourselves from those kinds of people. The law. You didn't take justice into your own hands. You didn't hurt them physically, you just demanded what was yours. That's not revenge, it's justice. Her words freed me from a guilt I didn't even know I was carrying. Part of me had questioned if I went too far, if I should have been more compassionate, more understanding, but Clara was right. I didn't start this, I just finished it, and I finished it using the proper channels, the law. Contracts, the courts, civilization, that's what separates us from animals. Not the ability to forgive any offense, but the ability to demand justice when we are wronged. And that's exactly what I did. 9 months after signing the agreements, Susanna gave birth to a boy. Mauricio announced it shyly on social media. A picture of the baby without showing faces, without names, just, "Welcome to the world, little one." Thank God for this gift. The comments were few. Most of their friends had abandoned them. No one wanted to be associated with convicted criminals, with people who had committed bigamy, with liars. Their social circle had evaporated. They were pariahs now. Social ghosts living gray lives in a gray apartment. I felt nothing when I saw the post. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction, just indifference. That baby wasn't my problem. That broken family wasn't my responsibility. I had moved on. My company was growing. My personal relationships were flourishing. Clara and I had made our relationship official. We weren't living together yet. It was still too soon, but there was a future there, one built on honesty, on mutual respect, on real love. Not on financial convenience. A year after the day I saw those wedding photos, I was having dinner with Clara at an Italian restaurant, the same restaurant where I'd had dinner with Susanna on that last night of ignorance. But this time it was different. This time the conversation was real. The laughter genuine, the future bright. Clara took my hand across the table. "Are you okay?" she asked. She noticed my moment of reflection. "I'm perfect," I replied. And it was true. For the first time in years, it was completely true. 18 months after that damned Saturday, when I saw the photos, my life was unrecognizable. And not just for what I'd lost, but for what I'd gained. I was standing on the terrace of my new apartment, one I bought with the money from the sale of the beach house. It was smaller than that ostentatious mansion, but it was completely mine. Every piece of furniture chosen by me. Every painting on the wall reflected my taste. Not someone else's. Clara was in the kitchen making coffee. We'd spent the weekend together, quietly, no drama, no lies. Just two people enjoying each other's company. That was something I never had with Susanna. Peace. My phone rang. It was Julio. "Francisco, I have news. Mauricio just made his 15th payment. He's 3 months behind, but he's paying. At this rate, he'll finish paying you in about 13 years instead of 10. But he's complying." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Good, let him keep it up." Julio continued. "Lourdes finished paying you last week. The full $50,000. She's free of debt to you. And Yvonne just sold a piece of land he had. His lawyer contacted me. He wants to negotiate the payment of the $120,000. He can pay $80,000 now, is better than waiting years for the full amount." Julio laughed. "You're getting soft in your old age." "No," I replied. "Just practical." And it was true. I no longer needed blood. I no longer needed to see them suffer, to feel validated. The suffering had occurred. The consequences had been met. Now I just wanted to close that chapter completely and move on. Mauricio would continue to pay for years. That was reminder enough. Susanna lived in an apartment that cost a fraction of what she was used to, raising a baby with limited resources. Watching as all her social media friends continued to post pictures of perfect lives while hers had crumbled. That was consequence enough. I had already won. I didn't need to keep kicking the corpse. Clara came out to the terrace with 2 cups of coffee, handed me one, and leaned on the railing next to me. "What are you thinking about?" "How life changes," I replied. 2 years ago, I was married to a woman who was betraying me. I was working nonstop to give her everything, and I was miserable without knowing it. Today I'm here with you. The company is doing better than ever. I have peace. I have clarity. It's strange how sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being the best. She smiled. "Do you think you would have been happy if you'd never found out? If Yvonne hadn't posted those photos?" I thought about it honestly. I don't think so. I would have found out eventually. And the longer it took, the worse it would have been. At least this way I found out when I still had time to rebuild my life, to find something real, to find you. Clara kissed me softly. You're a good man, Francisco. Despite everything they did to you, you didn't become bitter, you became stronger. I don't know if I'm good, I replied, but I know I'm not an idiot anymore, and that's enough for now. She laughed. We stood there in silence, drinking coffee, watching the city wake up under the morning sun. 2 months later, by pure chance, I saw Susanna. I was in a supermarket buying groceries. She was in the diaper aisle with the baby in a carrier on her chest. She looked tired. Deep dark circles, simple clothes, her hair pulled back carelessly, none of the glamour she used to project. She was comparing prices of 2 brands of diapers, clearly trying to decide which was cheaper. She saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met. There was a moment of recognition, of discomfort. Then she simply nodded, a minimal greeting. I returned the gesture and kept walking. There was nothing to say, no conversation to be had. We were 2 strangers who once shared a life. Now not even that. Leaving the supermarket, I thought about her. Not with anger, not with malicious satisfaction, just with a kind of distant sadness. She'd had everything. A comfortable life, a hard-working husband, financial security, and she threw it all away for a romance that was probably already showing cracks. Because love built on lies and betrayal is never solid. Mauricio, and she probably fought about money constantly. He probably blamed her for losing his career. She probably blamed him for not earning enough. The baby cried. The bills piled up, and the passion they once felt evaporated under the weight of the reality they themselves created. Meanwhile, I was flourishing. My company closed 3 major contracts that year. I hired more staff. We opened an office in another city. My income doubled, not because I worked harder, but because I worked more focused. No emotional distractions. No wife draining my resources. Everything I earned was reinvested in the business or saved. I bought stocks, bonds, investment properties. I built a solid portfolio. In 3 years, I'd be a millionaire several times over. Not by luck, by work, by discipline, by freeing myself from parasites. Clara and I got engaged on the 2nd anniversary of our first date. It was simple, no big productions, just the 2 of us in a small restaurant we liked. I gave her a ring. She cried. She said yes. We didn't post photos on social media. We didn't make dramatic announcements. We told our close friends and family. That was all, because our love didn't need public validation. It didn't need likes or comments. It was real. It was private. It was ours. The wedding was planned for 6 months later. A small ceremony, only 50 guests. People who really mattered to us. Nothing ostentatious, nothing fake, just genuine love celebrated genuinely. One night, a few weeks before the wedding, Clara asked me something I'd been avoiding. Did you ever forgive Susanna? I thought about it. Forgive. What did it really mean to forgive? It doesn't mean forgetting, I said finally. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. Forgiving means letting go of the poison. And yes, I think I forgave her. Not for her, for me, because carrying that hatred was consuming me. But forgiving doesn't mean the consequences disappear. She still has to live with what she did. She still has to pay her debt, literally and metaphorically. That doesn't change. But I don't lose sleep thinking about her anymore. I don't feel anger when I see her name. That's forgiveness for me. Clara nodded. I'm glad to hear that, because you can't build a future if you're still living in the past. And she was right. Every day that passed, Susanna and everything she represented became smaller in my rearview mirror, more distant, more irrelevant. My future was with Clara, with the company, with the life I was consciously building, not the one that had fallen into my hands out of habit or convenience. This time I was choosing. This time I was building with intention, and that made all the difference. On my wedding day with Clara, while I was standing at the altar waiting for her to walk down the aisle, I had a moment of absolute clarity. Everything that had happened, the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, had brought me exactly here. To this moment, with this woman, this life. If Susanna hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be trapped in a dead marriage. I'd still be working to finance someone else's life. I would never have met Clara. I would never have rediscovered who I really was. In a twisted sense, Susanna had done me a favor. She'd freed me, sure, in the worst possible way, but she'd finally freed me. Clara appeared at the end of the aisle, beautiful in a simple champagne-colored dress, smiling, crying a little, walking towards me, towards our future. There are no secrets between us, no lies, just two people choosing each other with their eyes wide open. That's what I never had with Susanna. Conscious choice, brutal honesty, love built on solid foundations. We got married that afternoon. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated with people who genuinely loved us, and when the night was over, we drove home together. Our home, our future, our beginning. It's been 5 years since I saw those wedding photos. Mauricio still pays me religiously every month. He's already paid $42,000 of the $250,000. He has almost 8 more years to go. Susanna now works in a department store. She earns minimum wage. The baby is 4 years old. Mauricio finally got a better job, but he never recovered what he lost. He'll never earn what he earned with me. Lourdes lives alone in her rented apartment. Yvonne finished paying me 6 months ago. He's free but broke. His business never recovered. And me, I have a company valued in the millions, a wife I love, a house full of peace, and not once in the last 3 years have I thought about Susanna with anger. Only with indifference, because that's what you get when you betray someone who gave you everything. Not hatred, indifference. And that's worse, because hatred at least means you still matter. Indifference means you no longer exist at all.